Isang mapagpalang araw sa iyo kapatid, samahan mo akong muli sa isang refleksyon patungkol sa Ebanghelyo ng ating Panginoong Hesus ayon sa sulat ni Dr. Lucas in chapter 15 verse 11b to 32. Ito yung parabola tungkol sa alibughang anak or the prodigal son.
Do you want to know?
Perhaps this parable is one of the most famous among Christ's parables, isn't it? A classic word literature. So everyone who happened to attend children's Sunday school would normally or would accurately narrate this ancient parable used and taught by Jesus. Alam natin yan tungkol sa parabolang ginamit at itinuro ng ating Panginoong Jesus. The preceding parables, that is the parable of the lost sheep and the parable of the lost coin, significantly corroborate with the main theme of this biblical pericope. And what is the main theme of this biblical pericope? That is, of course, God's unconditional love. Right? Yung pagmamahal, walang hanggang pagmamahal, and even that of the unconditional love of God. The primary offense made by the younger son was his impulsive appeal to get his inheritance from his father. Right? In ancient Palestine, a father would normally make a will specifying how much each son was to receive on his death. Right? For a son to demand his inheritance before his father's demise would, in that society, be regarded as an outrage. So, hindi katanggap-tanggap. Samantalang buhay pa ang iyong ama, malakas pa ang iyong ama, kapag ka hinihingi mo na yung mana, this is actually a form of disrespect. This is actually an expression of disrespect against your father. And even that in that culture, it is a display of humiliation to both the father and his son. Right? It's also a demonstration of the younger son's disrespect against the culture of ancient Jewish civilization and families' lawful and traditional practice. And so it appears that in early times, the norm was that sons inherited their father's property upon the latter's demise. So kung buhay pang iyong mga magulang, kung buhay pang iyong ama, you have no right to take your inheritance, to receive your inheritance, except unless, of course, your father initiates to give your inheritance prior to his death, right? It is lawful in Jewish culture that he may be stoned to death or stoned to death because of his appeal. So, pwede sana siyang mamatay dahil sa kanyang ginawa. He will be stoned to death, right? Dahil sa kanyang request, dahil sa kanyang appeal na kunin ang kanyang mana mula sa kanyang ama na buhay pa naman yung kanyang ama. His appeal is just tantamount to saying, I wish for your death, Dad. Para bagang sinasabi mong mamatay ka na sana, ama. O kaya naman ipinapanalangin mo na mamatay na ang iyong ama. So more than his offense against his father, this may also be extended to his older brother. Since a double portion of their inheritance is lawfully due to his older brother, but the story reveals an equal division of property or inheritance. And so the birthright of the firstborn son was disregarded. So equally divided naman nung dinivide ng kanyang ama dahil sa request ng kanyang younger son. So it was equally divided, and so the birthright due to the older brother was disregarded. Secondly, he sold and squandered his inherited property. The younger son wasted his money in reckless living. According to verse 13b, right? He squandered the property he inherited from his father. In pre-industrialized societies, land and other properties were the extended family's basic capital. Right? It is extended both to family and human's economic value. However, it is not only about the family's capital, also symbolizes family's social identity and even that of their status. Therefore, squandering his property degrades the value of their family's social identity. It also devalues their social status. Naubos. He squandered his property in reckless living, right? Lastly, he left his father and his older brother In ancient civilization, male siblings are the most important members of the family. They are expected to sustain the lineage of their family. So being the father's predecessor behind his older brother, his absence is a loss to his family. He could have shared his ability, the inherited property, and it's time to advance the family's property and attend to his father and older brother's welfare. Ngunit hindi na niya nagawa ito dahil nga umalis na siya sa kanilang tahanan. However, what is interesting in this parable is the younger son donning repentance after having learned and accepted the consequence of instant gratification. He was temporarily benefited by his action, but the negative consequence affected him much, right? This led him to repentance. Nang nakita na niyang may taggutom, nakita na niyang nahihirapan siya, dito na pumasok yung repentance. Dito na pumasok yung pagsisisi mula sa kanya. The process of repentance begins when he witnessed and experienced the certain reality of poverty, hunger, degradation, and loneliness. In his solitary moment, he rehearsed, right? Ganito ang aking sasabihin, Father, I have sinned against God and against you, and I am no longer fit to be called your son, and so treat me as one of your hired workers. In verse 18 and verse 19, the highlight of this parable gives emphasis upon the unconditional love of the father despite his son's sinfulness or wickedness. Sa kabila man ng ginawa ng kanyang anak, nilustay man niya yung kanyang ari-arian, nilustay man niya yung kanyang mana mula sa kanyang ama, ngunit nung siya ay bumalik, tinanggap pa rin siya ng kanyang ama. The consequence of his son's impulsive action would have been rejection and absolute separation from his family's household, ngunit hindi yan ginawa ng kanyang ama. However, the father instructed his hired servants to bring his son a robe, a ring, and sandals, right? He even instructed them to prepare a festive celebration for his son's arrival. This is how he welcomes his lost son. His warm welcome demonstrates his plenteous and unconditional love that reaches beyond the custom established by sin. Right? The right relationship that had been broken by sin is restored by a merciful and compassionate father. And so regardless of his wickedness, regardless of his past, regardless of his squandering his properties he inherited from his father, when he came back home, the father did embrace his lost son. And he did instruct his hired servants to prepare a festive celebration, for his son has come back to life. Muling nabuhay at muling nagbalik loob yung kanyang anak na nawalay ng marahil mahabang taon dahil sa kanyang paglulustay sa kanyang ari-arian na ipinamana mula sa kanyang ama. We are all worthy to die, but God reaches out His loving arms to save us. Right? It is a festive celebration in God's kingdom to welcome and accept persons whose heart is filled with repentance. And verse so, it is God's joy to embrace a repentant sinner in His kingdom. God seeks for us, sinners. This is the image of God's unconditional love. And so regardless of our sinfulness, regardless of our wickedness, God still welcomes us into His home. God still embraces us into the fold of His children, of His loving children. Dahil sa kabila man ng ating kahinaan, nagahari pa rin yung pag-ibig ng Panginoon sa kanyang mga anak. Patuloy nawa na magsilbing paalala para sa ating lahat ang kwentong ito sa walang hanggang pag-ibig ng Diyos na kanyang ipinadama nung kanyang isugo ang bugtong na anak, ang ating Panginoong Hesus, at patuloy nating nararanasan sa ating pang-araw-araw na buhay. Maging mapagkakatiwalaan nawa tayo sa pag-ibig na yan ng ating Panginoon, sa pamamagitan din naman ng pagpapadama ng pag-ibig sa Kanya at maging sa ating mga kapwa. Muli magandang araw sa iyo kapatid at pagpalain ka nawa ng ating Panginoon.